Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Got Mental Health Podcast. I am your co-host, Rachel Cove. I am a multi-passionate entrepreneur, author, artist, mother, and certified recovery coach.
I'm your co-host, Arthur Mogilevsky, entrepreneur, girl dad, animal activist, and owner of AM Healthcare, the premier substance abuse and mental health treatment program.
With the collective experience of 21 years working in the mental health field, we are excited to bring to you a safe and fun place to talk all things mental health.
We will be interviewing experts, thought leaders, entrepreneurs, and professionals in the entertainment industry to better educate, inform, and inspire our community to have positive mental wealth.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Got Mental Health Podcast. I am your co-host, Rachel Cove, along with my other co-host, Arthur
Mogilevsky, Rachel.
I don't really care.
One of these days.
Yeah, it's not going to be today. We have in the studio today Pavan Basra, who is a licensed mental health therapist, empowerment and psychedelic integration coach, and president of an ayahuasca church in Los Angeles, California. Pavan found her purpose and passion for healing and psychedelic plant medicines 11 years ago through her own healing journey, practices, and experiences that changed her life. The passion led to her to pursue a bachelor's degree in psychology from UCLA, a master's degree in couple and family therapy, a certification in ayahuasca healing, and a partnership with the Brazilian ayahuasca church. Common themes Pavan helps her therapy clients with are inner child healing, shadow work, gaining confidence, and finding their connection to themselves, their love for life and careers through healing and self-discovery. Pavan hosts intimate ayahuasca healing ceremonies for church members only who are in need of deeper spiritual connection, honoring their shadow self, inner child healing, overcoming addiction, ancestral healing and connection, intergenerational trauma, and integrating their psychedelic lessons into their daily lives. Pavan's church offers a safe space for church members who are looking for community, safety, and diversity, as she offers ceremonies for all genders, BIPOC focus, female only and male only, LGBT plus families, couples, and more. With Pavan's unique background as a trauma-informed therapist and psychedelic healer, she understands the interconnectedness of spirituality and healing overall. Welcome to the stage, Pavan Levin.
Welcome.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to talk about this.
I'm excited to have you on this topic because, our listeners are like really excited to hear about the various types of plant-based medicines that are out there, really beyond the traditional form of treatment that you normally have, like let me go see a therapist or because that's been done and it's worked for a lot of people, it hasn't worked for others. And so this is like an up and coming space where there's a lot of gray area, And I think the first question I have is, how the hell did you open up an ayahuasca church when you told me that, I thought that was brilliant. I don't know what attorney you found to come up with this plan, but to have an ayahuasca church in LA, can you talk us through that first?
So, I'm so glad that you brought that up.
Yeah.
I do have an amazing lawyer. He's great. He specifically works with psychedelic churches. Nice. And so this is getting really trendy right now in California, specifically, of finding a lawyer and opening a psychedelic church. And so, last year, I was approached by a man in Brazil, randomly out of nowhere, who just messaged me saying, I really like your vibe. I think you'd be a great fit to help us open a branch in the US. And at that point, I was already thinking, how can I help people with ayahuasca? Like, how can I do this? Because it's changed my life so much. And I see my clients just coming in with the same bullshit. And I'm like, this is, if you just drink the tea, it'll get you to a different place. So he reaches out to me and I said, okay, well, this is exactly what I've been wanting to do. I need to come out and meet you. I think he thought I was bluffing or something because, he's just in this small island in Brazil with his church. And I just sent him a screenshot of my plane ticket. And I was like, I'm coming these days. Make sure you pick me up from the airport. We're good to go. I'm going to do the training. Wow. So I flew out there not knowing anybody. They don't speak English. So I had to learn some Portuguese. Flew out there actually with my mom. She came and supported me. And I did the training, which really is just drinking tons of ayahuasca and handling it, and learning about the religion of ayahuasca, which he practices with UDV, which is União do Vegetal. It's one of the religions of ayahuasca. And there's 2 religions of ayahuasca that you can practice with legally in America. And they are both Brazilian. So you have UDV and Santo Daime. Santo Daime you hear more about for some reason. And so he has this full church set up with bylaws, statements of beliefs, everything set up already. The whole skeleton is already based out there. So then I come back here. I reach out to this lawyer that he referred me to. And we just opened it up with that. You need to have your statement of beliefs, your bylaws, your board, all these things set in motion. Select your board members, do your board meetings, and you're basically good to go. It's actually a lot easier than what I expected because of the Religious Freedoms Rights Act. So it's the same way that Native Americans can practice with peyote.
So there's so much to dissect here, right? Okay, so first of all, you're gonna have a lot of people out there that they're gonna be turned off by the religion thing, right? So it's like another religion, another thing for me to believe in. Can you break down what are the beliefs of the religion? Does it conflict with people who have religious beliefs that are separate from that, right? In Christianity or Judaism or Hinduism or whatever else you believe in. Can you walk through that place? Because I mean, for me, I'll speak for myself personally. I'm not religious. I understand the idea behind religion. I understand the purpose of it. I won't say that I'm atheist. I'm more a believer in traditions of cultures, right? And the things that religion brings from a traditional standpoint. But if you're going to start talking to me about, these out of world body beliefs and all these kinds of stuff, that usually kind of turns me off. So what is the religion of ayahuasca?
I'm right there with you because I actually was atheist at some point in my life. Before I did ayahuasca, I was atheist. So now I'm very spiritual, and I understand now after drinking the tea that ayahuasca is my religion. And I'm not afraid to use that word anymore. Like ayahuasca is this God that I've praised, of this vine and this beautiful leaf that have come together to create this harmony in my life. So what you're asking is for me to explain the religion of ayahuasca. So for me personally, I wouldn't even say there's a set of rules of what this religion of ayahuasca is. It's just a word used to really define it. Especially for legal purposes, you have to say this is the religion. And the things we practice with UDV, they are kind of clashing because a lot of UDV stems from Christianity. The man who discovered UDV, I think what happens with ayahuasca is it's bringing up things from your subconscious and it's tapping into channels that you're connected to. So this man obviously had a Christian background and he had enlightenment through ayahuasca, but with hints of Christianity into it. So
yeah, it's interesting. If you look at a lot of ancient photos, they are saying that in a lot of these photos, these old religions are using plant medicine to have these type of spiritual awakenings that they're talking about, like the flaming bush.
Supposedly that was chacruna leaf, the DMT.
Right.
Yeah. And I did a deep dive into this because I am not a follower of Christianity. I grew up Sikh, which is not even, it's a different branch in India. Yeah. And then I became atheist. And I was just like, I hate God, Jesus, like all these things was just so off-putting. Those people that would come to me at college and try to talk to me about Jesus, I would literally get into arguments with them about science and how science is the way and all these things. So I literally looked for a fight because I hated religion so much. Right. And so once I got into this, I was like, I need to learn to respect all religions and do my research. So I did a deep dive into the Bible and I found some verses. I don't have them on my phone. There was one that said, Jesus literally said to the people, I am the vine, you are the leaves. Drink from me and basically like eat this vine that I am. And I was like, that is so crazy because ayahuasca is literally a vine and a leaf.
So what you're saying is Jesus was mixing trance music and he would have had a blast.
Jesus was taking MDMA.
Just some techno and some MDMA.
And having sex with everybody.
Like, you're good to, I mean, can you imagine?
Even the tree of life. If you look deep into the meaning of the tree of life, like so much of it represents plant medicine. The mushrooms, the red one. Like we know so much about mushrooms being linked with Christianity. Santa Claus, it was a shaman, like these crazy
So not to make this whole thing about religion, right? Because we're not here to talk about religion, but how much did religion actually create a negative relationship to plant-based medicines and substances over time, right? Because I feel like the marketing and branding behind religion is stay away from all bad things, be abstinent, do this, don't do anything bad, be good to God, be good to your community, which is great. There's some good foundation there, right? But how much of it was like switched from we're going to use this to heal to don't do any of this because this is all bad?
I don't even think it was religion that did that. I think it's the people's interpretation of it, right? How is drinking ayahuasca any different from drinking the blood of Christ, which is literally alcohol, which is the worst thing for you? Like alcohol is demonic, like how can you just, there's no difference with it. So it's how we interpret it. It's not the religion. Because when you read these verses, so much of it is honoring plants and ingesting the plants. Like we are children of the earth and all these things. But then, the rules that people have misconstrued of religion is what made it so ugly. And that's why I had a disconnection with religion. Mm-hmm. I was hating on everything religious because of how people interpreted it. So now I find my own interpretation of it and my own connection to it, which has made me actually use the words God and religion, which I never used 6 years ago.
I'm the same way. I mean, I think there's so many, there's this one book that says, seek where religious people are right. Mm-hmm. And so if you really open the Bible and you don't see it as something religious, but what can I learn from here? There's so many beautiful parables in there. So when you were, okay, so for the people out there who are so terrified of doing ayahuasca, right? Mm-hmm. Can you walk us through those few days where you were being educated on what ayahuasca is and the moments before, the moments after, the moments during? What was it like for you?
Mm-hmm. So I went by myself. I was invited to one when I was 25 by a colleague of mine a couple months after I graduated grad school. And they always say the medicine calls to you. So when people say they're scared of it, it's not going to call to you yet because you're not ready. And it really called to me. This door opened. I literally was off the grid for about a week, and I opened my phone and I didn't get an email from someone that's like, hey, I'm going, do you want to come? And so I went without any expectations. A lot of it in the beginning for me was just research purposes because I'm a big nerd. I really wanted to be a psychopharmacologist. So I was like, I just want to see what this is about. The preparation, I think, is the hardest part. The dieta that you follow of, these strict things that you can't eat and things like that. It's just to connect you to the plant more and to the power of Pachamama, this amazing goddess grandmother that comes to visit you and helps you. I think the reason people are so afraid of it, though, surprisingly, from what I hear the most, is I'm so afraid of purging. I don't like throwing up.
And yet they go and purge.
You're going to purge with drinking alcohol or doing other things, right?
Yeah.
That's what I've heard actually the most. And a lot of other people are afraid my relationships will change. And I'm so scared of that. But why be scared of these things when this is what you need to do? As for the purging, we all know trauma is stored in your body. And so when you purge with ayahuasca, you're purging out the dark energy in your body and that trauma. So if you're having a really blissful, nice experience, you might not even really purge like that, maybe just once. But if you have a lot of trauma in your body that you need to get out, you're literally going to purge that out. And so it feels really cathartic and it feels amazing. But people automatically assume it's, oh, I'm throwing up. And it's really not like that. It's actually an amazing spiritual cleanse. But the preparation for it can be pretty intense. It's about 2 weeks of this dieta that you follow. And mental preparation. You really want to stay away from people that you feel like drain your energy, avoiding arguments or things at work that are just not good for you. I think that was the hardest part of it.
How does someone do that in a normal situation, right? Like if you have a job, if you're, like how do you, and you have people that your coworkers or if you have friends that want to hang out with you and you just know they're just bad for you, right? But in reality, they're still in your life. Like, how do you disconnect from that? Like, how was that experience for you?
That basically is, again, on whether you're ready to actually experience grandmother ayahuasca, because what she's teaching you before you drink the tea is set your boundaries, be assertive, put yourself first, tend to yourself. If you can't even do those things, you're probably not ready to even do ayahuasca to an extent. Now, here's the caveat with it. Obviously, ayahuasca's helped so many people with addiction. You can't tell an addict, hey, just don't drink alcohol for 2 weeks. That's almost impossible.
Right.
So unfortunately, there are cases where people, drank the day before because they're such severe alcoholics and they can still get the help that they need from the ayahuasca.
I think there's an important question here. Can you die from taking ayahuasca?
You can only die from taking ayahuasca if you're mixing it with a certain type of tobacco, which you hear, like there's 6 cases in Peru where this happened. It was a specific tobacco tea that they were drinking with it, which you should not mix that. And if you can't really die from it, but you can have severe mental health issues after if you lie on your medical intake form and say, oh, I'm not taking any medications. I need to know everything you're taking, especially if it's psychoactive medications like Adderall, antidepressants, or anti-anxiety meds, any of that type of stuff, mood stabilizers, then yes, that could lead to you having psychosis.
Yeah, I think that's important to talk about because, I see the beauty in taking it, right? But then there's also the dark side and fear of where people are coming from, right? Like for me, it's, so taking certain substances or whatever, if I would ever be put in that position, like that's like the first thing that comes to my mind. Can I die from this, right? And then it's like, okay, am I going to have a crazy trip, or what am I going to experience? It starts falling down from there, right? What about people who have a history of schizophrenia or psychosis in their family and they have no idea about that and there's no connection to it, and then they go and experience this?
Yeah, that could totally be a risk for sure. It could totally ignite the schizophrenia to come back or to come into them afterwards. But so here's another side of that.
Okay.
I've spoken with indigenous healers when I lived in Brazil for some time. And a lot of them believe if you have epilepsy, you cannot drink the tea either in Western culture. But a lot of them believe if you have epilepsy, history of schizophrenia, history of bipolar, all these intense mental health issues, that they believe it's a spiritual thing that's in your body. And if you drink the ayahuasca, you can actually get rid of that. And I actually know some people that were diagnosed with bipolar who never experienced bipolar after drinking ayahuasca, which is very interesting too. But we have to also be aware, where did they have the bipolar? Where was it stem from? These people I know, a lot of them were diagnosed with bipolar when they were struggling with addiction. So how do we know if they were actually bipolar, or if they were having this manic episode because they were having withdrawal, or they were under the influence of something? So there's also these things. But if you speak to any indigenous leader, they will tell you that, no, you should drink the tea to get rid of that.
Right. Well, that brings in another thing. It's like, how many psychiatrists misdiagnose patients and they're technically not bipolar?
I have so many clients that came in with that. And I'm like, you do not have bipolar. So that's that. And it's really popular right now. The biggest diagnoses we see right now are ADHD. I don't know if I'm sure you guys heard about the shortage of Adderall throughout the nation, which is so bizarre and weird. Not that many people should have ADHD.
Right.
We went through a phase where autism was highly diagnosed. We had the bipolar phase. Every year, Big Pharma is influencing our healers and our doctors to overdiagnose with certain things that they have connections with medications. So we also don't know if these diagnoses are even real.
I think what's important is that, like, for what you're doing, you use this medicine so sacredly. There's a difference. I mean, I personally can't imagine someone being like, yo, bro, you want to go do some ayahuasca and let's go to the club tonight, right?
That's probably existed.
It is.
I'm
you even
sure
function?
there's that one
There
dude.
is now. So they're actually in Canada, they just passed making an ayahuasca pill.
But
See, that's
is it
where you
is that
cross
like
the line.
ayahuasca microdosing?
I don't really know if it's going to be a microdose or if it's just like take the pill and have your experience, but they're missing the whole point. It's not even the tea. It's the community, it's the experience, it's the ceremony.
Right.
So when you're taking a pill, it just detaches. First of all, it's extremely disrespectful to indigenous people. And also, you're just detaching from the plant. Like, that's the purpose of it. So it is happening. And I've heard some people that have ayahuasca microdose, they'll go to the club and take a little bit. And I'm like, this is just absolutely disrespectful. And I'm sure if they were to have a grand experience, Pachamama would probably slap them in the face or do something to show them that they are not allowed to be doing this.
Yeah, they'd be scared shitless to do it again.
Exactly.
I mean, that's the problem with things becoming legalized and becoming, you have big pharma companies they would love to have all of these substances legalized so they could just make a killing off of it.
Yeah.
But they can't make money off ayahuasca, right? Because it's a plant, right? Like, don't they have to? It has to be.
No, but they would probably induce it with some chemical and then turn it into, like the same thing what they did with weed, right? They started inducing it with its own biochemicals, and then they made pills and gummy bears and all these other things that didn't exist in the 60s.
There are a lot of ayahuasca churches here that actually practice with synthetic ayahuasca. So now it's important when you sit with ceremony, ask the leader, how do they brew the ayahuasca? Do you know how it's brewed?
Let's jump into that. Let's say somebody's seeking this stuff, right? And they want to get some more information. And what are the questions they should be asking a church or a healer such as yourself?
If they're afraid of legalities and stuff, ask them, like, how is this church really set up? That's one question to ask. Okay. But we have a lot of underground ones that are amazing here too. So you don't have to ask that if you're not afraid of it. How the ayahuasca is brewed, where it comes from, and all those things are really important. Usually the typical hubs are South America and Hawaii.
Hawaii?
Hawaii is a huge
Really?
hub. There's a huge farm out there from Terrence McKenna, who's like this psychedelic guru who is, so Hawaii is a big hub for that too. And it's easy access for Americans, you have to go through customs and all that. Asking the facilitator why they got into this is a huge one. What was their purpose? Because there's a couple places I've heard of where it's just these very rich men who are hosting these ceremonies, flying shamans out from South America just because they want to get money, because they know people are going to pay top dollar for this.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. So asking the person, like, what is your why? Why did you start this? Why did you get into ayahuasca in the first place? What is the process of facilitating? You want to connect with them and hear about their experience. Even with the shaman, ask him, why did you get into shamanism? I asked one shaman at one ceremony before, and he was like, I didn't want to do this. I just wanted to be a cop. And I froze. I was like, what?
Did you still end up doing it?
Yeah, I ended up having, I was there already. I was stuck there.
Did it have a negative experience?
I had a very profound experience because at the end of the day, my belief is like the shamans and stuff are there to hold space. But at the end of the day, you really are your own healer through the experience. And Pachamama is the true shaman. And so I was able to have a really grand experience through that because I followed whatever I needed to go into.
Like, what does the shaman do during the ceremony process? Like,
Each one's different. So it depends. Like sometimes they'll be blowing like certain tobaccos on you and like, you know, shaking, I forget the name of the leaf. There's a leaf that, a very healing leaf that they'll shake around and they'll kind of whistle and play music. They do prayers and calls as well. I am not a shaman by any means. No one should ever call me that, but I would call myself a facilitator. I know certain calls with the UDV religion that I'll sing out loud. But really, it all boils down to you. If you're having a difficult experience, you got to pull yourself through and push through that. Obviously, we are there to hold space for you and to give you support, but it's mainly just to support and make sure you're okay.
Yeah, because I'm interested in regards to the person that's holding space, the shaman, the facilitator. Are they taking ayahuasca themselves or are they staying abstinent from any substances in that moment?
They take ayahuasca too, but it's very small. Like I'd say 1 finger line of it.
And what would be the point of taking a small amount?
The purpose is to make sure that you're all on the same spiritual plane, to make sure that you're all on the same spiritual level. You know, if someone's there that isn't on that same level, there's things that they can't tap into to help the people through their experience when they're deep into the medicine.
Yeah, I imagine because when you're taking psychedelics like that, the lines there's no lines anymore. And I think that's what's so important about having a very trained facilitator is boundaries are gone.
Yes.
There's no boundaries. You're one with everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's what's really important about a trained facilitator and someone that's not just, you know, a cop that didn't work out.
Exactly.
And I'm going to go be a shaman in Brazil.
Yeah. Yeah.
Still had a profound experience, so kind of.
I did, but you know, you're right. And I think that's a huge piece of it is seeing, that's another question to ask or a thing to observe is, are they genuinely practicing with this or are they abusing it?
Right.
You know, that's something to really look into when you're asking questions to your facilitator.
I think there's another question is, well, like I can only do ayahuasca if I go to Peru.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's it. If I'm not going to Peru, I'm not going to do it
Yeah.
anywhere else,
Yeah.
right? Give me the opposing argument to that.
So I've done both now. I've been to Brazil and I have not been to Peru, but I'll plan to in the future. And I've done here in the US. The biggest difference I would say is obviously language there and culture. There are things that they will not understand in South America that I need to process and talk through. For example, my mom, when she came with me to Brazil, when I was doing the training, she decided to join during the biggest dose that we were taking out of nowhere. She's like, I'm going to join this one. No one stopped her. No one knows English out there.
And she took it as well.
She drank the biggest dose with me. It was a 5-to-1 ratio.
I've met your mom. She's a badass.
She's a firecracker.
Yeah.
And she ended up having an extremely intense experience that led to her having PTSD for about a year afterwards.
Wow.
Because no one knew English. And I'm deep in the medicine, right? So when she needed help, I'm like, I'm off astral projecting in, you know, a whole other place. And the one person that spoke English was there training. He didn't know what to do. And so my mom's having this intense experience and no one really knew how to hold space for her because they didn't know what was going on. They couldn't fully understand what my mom was seeing or what she needed help with. But if I was there, like if I was fully there, not in a different world, I would have been able to know what to do and help her. So that's another thing of the safety, right? I'm not bashing, and I think it's amazing to do it in Peru and Brazil. It's absolutely one of the most beautiful experiences you can have. But I feel like there is a different level of cultural connection when you have someone that speaks the language and also things that you're working on that they're probably not going to understand because culture is a huge difference. Right. Western culture, that the issues we deal with is very different from what they deal with. So also just knowing how to hold space for that.
Can we just define holding space? Because my mom and I, we have gotten to this point because we're both in this world of therapy and blah, blah, blah. And it's like on some level, we want people to stop saying, I'm holding space for you. can you hold space for me? Like I do it. I say it all the time to clients. Like I'm here to hold space with you. Whatever you're here to do, I'm here to hold space for you. And then sometimes like, what am I actually saying? Like, what does it mean to hold space for someone?
I think it depends on each person on what they're needing. But for example, so I went to a Washuma ceremony. It's like this indigenous cactus. I went 2 weeks ago. And this woman that was there is a Black female and was having a lot of ancestral stuff come up. And no one knew how to hold space for it. They didn't know what to say. They didn't know what to do. So she came to me. Holding space for me was let it out. So she wept, she yelled. She had her ancestors cry through her body as a vessel. I held her. I let her just talk to me about her upbringing with her mom, being one off from slave generation and these things. That's what I mean by holding space, is just letting someone just be themselves. And I think a lot of times, sometimes in these spaces, they try to contain it. Or, I think the biggest thing is just letting someone just be themselves, in my case.
Right.
And giving some insight on what I can offer to you as well from my own experiences.
Is there you're a clinician as well. Is there a benefit of having a clinician being the facilitator of a ceremony? What are those benefits? Like, what have you seen that you've been able to provide to people that you've hosted in comparison to you being the person actually taking it, hosted by a shaman or someone who's not a clinician, but they have a lot of experience, obviously. But what's the differences?
There's a huge difference that I've seen, and I've had feedback from a lot of people. Having access to a trauma-informed therapist when you're dealing with your trauma through ceremony is so important. Yes, there's spiritual practices and calls and prayers that you can do, but there is a different level of dialogue and exercises and grounding that I can offer that I'm fully trained in. And so even with the integration process, you're not just getting integration with someone who's just drank ayahuasca and they had these profound experiences and know what to say, but on the other side, they're an accountant. My whole life is dedicated to healing and integration and spirituality and just being a better person. And so afterwards, with integration, you have access to me 24/7 whenever you need me. On how to it's like basically therapy after that for the rest of your life. Now you're part of the church. You have access to a therapist your whole life. And so that's been the biggest thing I've noticed, is that having that trauma-informed background can go such a long way, because when you notice in sometimes in these spaces, someone's like, oh yeah, I had a vision of, let's say it's something extreme like their molester, their predator that came into a vision. A lot of people still feel very uncomfortable and don't know how to handle those types of conversations. For me, it's like, oh, this is nothing. I hear this on the daily. Right. So I can have that conversation without a reaction, and offer support and guidance in a different way, offer resources as well. So it's an outside of me. I have a whole network of people I can send these people to as well. Sure. And that's really the beautiful part of it as well.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of people scared to do ayahuasca because they're afraid of memories coming back. I've also, some really dear friends of mine have gone to Peru and did a lot of ayahuasca with a group of people, and they had profound experiences. And then I also got scared by one of the things that they said, that there was like demonic spirits that possess people's body, and they all had the same experience. And I believe in that stuff, and I've had experiences with that stuff. And I think that's scary, right? Especially if you have no idea how to handle that, but also if you have a very delicate psyche, right? And so how do you deal with that stuff? Like, that's serious stuff.
This just happened actually at a ceremony 2 months ago at one of mine. She's laying there like this. I think she's having a blissful experience. She wakes up, she's like, I met the devil. And I was like, whoa.
After
the ceremony's done.
She just said it like that.
Yeah, she's like, yeah, the devil came to me, so nonchalant about it. I'm like, wait, what happened? But with these experiences, because I believe in that too. And I believe ayahuasca is that portal. You're floating in between life and death. That's what it really is. You're like in that white light part. That's what ayahuasca takes you to. I think a couple things is I don't consider myself to be like this light worker. I actually go by being a shadow worker. And so this is what I love playing with the most. I love talking about and helping people get through these experiences, because we have to pay attention, like, why did these dark parts come up? Where are they coming from? What experiences led you to have these thoughts? Is it really just a fear you had as a kid of like demonic stuff, or is there something darker that we need to go explore with that's in your soul? And usually they can kind of pinpoint where this is coming from and what messages they're receiving from it. So for example, this girl, who had this experience, she actually got clarity from Pachamama that one of her aunts was practicing witchcraft on her, which she already kind of knew. And this is very common in like a Latinx culture where people practice with like black magic. And she already kind of knew this, but Pachamama gave her the clarity of like, yeah, this is happening. So it gave her now her integration processes. I need to make sure that I'm acting out from my light self. I need to honor my shadow self and give her love and light and hold her. And I also need to work better on shielding myself and guarding myself and protecting myself. So if that means finding your own spiritual practice that suits best for you, because oftentimes when these darker energies come in, it's kind of showing that you're a little bit vulnerable and you need to have more of a strength and protection over yourself. And so I think that's the biggest takeaway when that experience comes up is you need to have more of a integrative process of finding ways to protect yourself. Whatever that means. If that means smudging yourself in the morning, taking a bath, whatever, doing a prayer, figuring out what that leads into that spirituality. And that's why I say, like, before ayahuasca, I was an atheist. I didn't believe in anything. And then I realized, oh gosh, like I need to protect myself. There's so much that I don't know and science doesn't always answer it. So I need to protect myself. But a biggest thing is also the shadow self. Seeing the devil does not mean you are possessed and there's a demon. Could also mean that there's parts of you that you are ignoring and that you need to actually nurture into. Or else the devil is going to come and show you, like, I'll take over if you don't want to nurture it.
I think it's also learning how to get okay with the devil within yourself.
Exactly.
Was the aunt alive?
What was that?
The aunt alive?
Yes.
See, my solution would have just been hire a hitman and
I know, literally.
just get it over with.
Literally.
I don't have to take any more baths. I can just finish her off. I mean, listen, at that point, no holds bar. I don't care for family.
Fair game.
That's fine. How many people have you known that chase this high, that chase this experience? Because I mean, and I want to say this. I have a family member that has gone through churches, has opened a church, has managed a church, not in the United States and European countries, and she was doing it like 9 or 10 times a year. I mean, it felt like a lot. I don't know. I mean, I felt like she's chasing something.
Yeah.
Do you see that is a possibility?
Yes.
Like what do you do with clients like that?
I haven't had any like that for me personally. I think it's because of how I hold the space and how I talk about the plant.
Okay.
But yes, I've seen a lot of people abuse it. So it's interesting, right? Because cultural, again, in Brazil, the church that I am branched with, they do ceremony twice a month. So everyone comes, they pay membership every month. They come do ceremony twice a month in big groups, and they all drink the tea. But what I noticed was they're not having, like, most of them are drinking like a 2-finger, maybe 3-finger amount. They're not having these like grand big cups unless they really need to. So culturally, it's like they come, they drink the tea, and they have their little hangout. It's totally different. But here in America, I've met a lot of people who just do it because they're like, I want a trip, which is such the wrong word to use anyways. It's not a trip. It's an experience. It's a journey. But I've met a lot of people here who do that. And it's frustrating because some of them haven't had that experience where they've gone into that shadow work because for some reason, maybe Pachamama's just like, I'm not going to show you that. Like,
because the intention is like, I just want to party.
Yeah,
that's pretty
exactly.
much
And at the end of the day, it's still a substance. It's still going to do things to you, right? But they're not having these profound experiences of this shadow work, of this deep healing. And they keep coming back because they think it's fun, like it's mushrooms or something.
Which I still don't understand.
I don't understand. And some of them have done it so much where they don't even purge anymore. And they're just like, doing their trip and doing their yoga and stuff. I have met a limited amount of people, but there are people that definitely do that. And it's heartbreaking to see that because you're taking up space for people that really need the healing. But on the other hand, if you are an addict, there is a strict formula you should follow.
Can you talk about that formula?
Yeah. So basically you're drinking the tea, I think it's like 3 times a week, almost every day for a week for about 3 months straight.
Wow.
Yeah. You're doing this for 3 months, typically like at least 3 treatments a week. This is something I tried to practice on with my dad when he was struggling with his addiction. And I was like, let me try this. And I actually know the church leader in Brazil got himself sober from crack by following this. He was doing ayahuasca in an ashram, I would call it, for a whole year. Just drinking the tea, going deep in, doing it. And he's been sober now for 6 years.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Are you sure?
I wanted to ask if you don't mind talking about your experience with your dad and what that was like for him.
Yeah. My dad, if he was here, he would have It would be like 50-50. I think
Okay.
half of him is like, my dad's a complicated man. How do I say this?
Aren't they
I
all?
watched him during every ceremony. We were doing it every weekend for about a month or two. And I saw him, and he was having profound experiences. The stuff that he shared with me of what he saw and was able to put to bed with his own trauma was absolutely life-changing. The problem was he went into it not for himself. He went into it to save the family and, you know, to repair things with my mom. Everything was about making sure he could get better for my mom. And so I think that clouded it because my mom was also there during these ceremonies. So anytime he had these intense experiences, they would come and hold each other and stuff. And I'm like, he's got to sit with it and just like sit in the shit, you know, and be depressed, like be sad, be traumatized, do that. But then they would come and hold each other. So I think he needs another round of just doing it. But he had these profound experiences where he was able to confront so much trauma, but they were so profound where they started actually making him feel sad afterwards because he's finally sitting with his shit. My dad is very distractive. He's bouncing off the walls. It's just everything is like, I need music. Put the TV on. Like he can't sit in stillness, and so ayahuasca forced him to sit in stillness, and. So he is a lot better now. I've seen a drastic change in him compared to last year when he was drinking ayahuasca. So there has been a change, even though he won't fully admit that it was ayahuasca. I know that played a big role into it. But I think the problem is that he went in for the wrong intention and he didn't get to fully integrate what he learned because he got scared. He got scared that now, oh my gosh, all my stuff came up. I'm feeling sad. Yeah, Dad, be sad. You've been through a lot of fucked up stuff. Be sad. But no, just immediately wanted to overshadow it by then getting back into the old ways of like just bouncing off the walls all the time. And so I think he would have to say 50% like, do it, that's great. The other 50% is like, no, don't do it. It's, you know, these reasons and oh, it's scary. But I think he would have a different experience if he went into it with the right intention, not just for my mom.
I'm just fascinated that you convinced your parents to participate in this.
Why? Because you know her parents?
No, because I want to know how she did it so I can convince mine.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'd be able to do it with them. That'd be, I don't.
You would, I think, eventually when it hits.
Yeah.
Not beforehand, you might be terrified, but
Yeah.
when it hits, you're one with everything. You
Yeah.
see the little children within your parents.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Which is
really,
exactly what I
yeah.
saw when I did it with my parents. My parents' first ceremony with me. And they were on the other side of the room. I was on this other side with my friend. They were over there on their side. And I had this amazing experience where I was able to see all of the trauma in my lineage. I saw my dad as a little boy walking in England, getting beaten up on the streets because he grew up in this really terrible area in England where it was like brothels and like red light district type of area. And I saw the trauma his dad inflicted on him, who was also a severe alcoholic and addict. And it just gave me the sense of forgiveness because I went my whole life being angry at my dad from age 14 to like 25, just loving him but hating him at the same time.
Because you were empathetic to and understanding of where he came from. and understand why.
100%.
Yeah,
I don't think I would have seen any of that though if he wasn't in the room doing it with me.
I mean, you could have with age and maturity and time.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you would have held that space and understanding. Like I've come to that place in my life with my family without having to do certain things. And but yeah, I mean, you never know. I mean, I applaud them for doing that with you. You know what I mean? As a kid, because there's not a lot of parents. They're very, parents, especially like that generation, and from a cultural standpoint,
Totally.
like to be that exposed
Yeah.
and willing to be like that exposed in front of your children.
Yeah.
Like that usually never happens. So I applaud them for taking that step. That's huge.
I think what changed it was, I lied to them when I went to my first ceremony. I was like, I'm going to like a retreat. And I had such a profound experience. I needed to share it. And I was like, my mom and I are best friends. I was like, I need to tell her. Turns out she had been looking to do ayahuasca for about 2 years, but couldn't find anything to do it. And she just didn't have the connections. And so this ceremony that came up with my parents, it was just going to be me and my dad that went because we're helping with the addiction. And then randomly one spot opened up. And I was like, Mom, I think this spot's for you. And she was like, what? Oh my God. So she took it. But the way I convinced my parents, who are Indian, to do this was by me just being my authentic self and seeing that change in me. I was fucking wild. And I was an angry, angry person. I was evil. You would not have me on this podcast if you knew me like 6 years ago. And I'm sure people watching this are like, that bitch, she's on this talking about mental health and healing. I was just such an angry person. And so seeing me change into like a lighter person where I can actually cry and not be angry and not want to seek revenge on people. Like my whole life was like, I'm going to get revenge on people when they fuck me over. Seeing that change in me is what my parents, where my mom and my dad were like, holy shit, this is powerful. I haven't drank alcohol since March of last year. I never had a problem with it, but just turned off now. Like never want to drink alcohol ever again, if possible. And my siblings have also seen the change too in me. I hope that they'll be able to join one day too.
Oh, that'd be
I'm
awesome.
currently working on convincing my little brother to do it. But I think that was the biggest thing for my parents was just seeing me change, where then they were like, okay, we have to see what this is all about.
Why do you think plant medicines, psychedelics, okay, let me reframe that. Do you think that psychedelics work faster than normal therapy?
Yes. If I could tell every client of mine, drink ayahuasca first, then do therapy, it would just be life-changing. I actually just hosted my boss/mentor on Saturday because we're basically going to partner with this agency that I manage and host ceremonies for clients that want to join the church. And she was like, all right, I got to test it out just to see what you're all about. And she had this amazing, profound experience just on Saturday where she was like, holy shit, I get it now. Not bashing on therapy. Therapy's great. But I think when you have an experience like with ayahuasca, you're doing like 5 to 10 years of therapy in just 4 to 5 hours. You're able to have all of these healing images. It's the healing images, these things that you never thought you could reach a place of forgiveness or surrender and acceptance, that she just takes you there. And then after that is when you have your therapist to help you integrate and help you honor what you learned and stick to it, hold you accountable. So I don't think you should never not do therapy. I think the problem is a lot of people are doing ayahuasca and they're not having a person guide them afterwards. Mm-hmm. So these are those people that are like, I'm just going to drink it and I'm just going to do this. Or they keep going and doing it like all the time, having these massive doses when they don't have addiction or severe trauma. They just keep doing these high doses because no one's holding them accountable. Like, why are you doing it? You know, what is the purpose of this? So that is the best benefit of having plant medicine and therapy together. And I hope that could be the new wave one day.
Why did you choose ayahuasca over psilocybin, ketamine? I mean, there's a lot of other forms of MDMA, MDA, you know.
Yeah. I've done all of them.
I'm sure.
I told you I was crazy.
I mean, listen, you got to pick one. You're going to have to test them all out.
I was crazy though. So when I first tried like ketamine and mushrooms and all the psilocybin and all that stuff, I was young. It was more like, oh, I want to party. And it was fun for that reason. Mm-hmm. And I was trying to escape from all the stuff with going on from my dad. But so mushrooms has been very profound for me. Psilocybin has been great, but it's still in my opinion, it's still too interactive. It's still too outward where I can talk to people, we can hang out and vibe and do all these things. With ayahuasca, they call it the spirit molecule for a reason. You are literally in the limbo between life and death. And I have such extreme anxiety and control issues. And I can still find a way to control through other things that I can control because I'm diverting the attention off me if I'm taking psilocybin or ketamine. And I can just go and chat up with you and talk about my experiences with you and share energy exchange with you. With ayahuasca, though, you can't touch each other. You don't look at each other. You are with a blindfold on or with your eyes closed, just fully going inward. And it forces you to just go deep in there, even though you don't want to. That's why I needed something that was going to just slap me in the face and fully take control over where I don't have the ability to just control it myself.
So being as someone who likes to be in control and has anxiety of losing control, what message do you give someone like myself, like you gave yourself when you first started this journey, to feel comfortable with letting go? Because from my own personal experience, like, if I knew that I wouldn't be able to control a situation or direct, or, even if I'm put in a bad situation, knowing that I can figure it out, get myself out of it, get to a safe place, right? Knowing that I can do that is a safe haven in a lot of ways, right? So, and I'm assuming you're the same kind of a person, right? How do you get to a place where you're like, okay, I'm okay if I lose that for that 6 hour
being okay with dying.
Yeah.
Being okay with dying. I mean, yeah.
Literally
being okay with dying.
Because you're saying like living in limbo between life and death.
Yeah.
If I'm hearing it and I'm someone who's never had any experience with any plant-based medicine, that's fucking scary.
Yeah, it is. I think for me, it was to a point where I had felt like I had hit a rock bottom. I had no control over my emotions. I was diagnosed with alopecia and completely balding all over my head. And I've been battling this since 2014. I had IBS problems. I would just be getting panic attacks. Like we'd just be talking at the dinner table and I'd just start freaking out for no reason. I have to leave the room. It just became like it just took over me. And unfortunately, my anxiety became my friend. And to be honest, I still love her. She helps me get my shit done. She makes me successful. She helps me be in control of the things that I need to be in control with. But I've learned to kind of shut her off too. But I think back then it was just this point of, God, I'm so tired of living like this. My health is now deteriorating. And at that point, it was kind of like, one thing is I do a lot of research before I do something. And so I knew I'm not going to die from ayahuasca. I knew that. You can't overdose from it. It's a plant. You can't. And I was at that point where, okay, I'm not going to die, but maybe parts of me will die that I'm ready to just kill off. So that way I can make space for this healed side of myself. And that's where it really took me. Talking with a lot of people about their experiences helped me a lot as well to get that clarity of, I think this is the time for me. But just having that anxiety control my life was the worst feeling in the world. Ugh, I would never want to go back to that place. And so at that point, it was kind of like, I already feel like I'm dying. It feels like I'm dying. I can't have dinner and then a panic attack. Like that already feels like death to me. So at that point, I was willing to just go into it and experience that, to see that. And it feels so nice having Pachamama, a grandmother, control and take over for me.
Do you call it, I'm sorry if I'm saying this wrong, Pachamama?
Pachamama.
Because you're face to face experiencing this feminine energy? Because like with something like Wachuma, right, it's much more masculine.
Grandfather.
Yeah. And so do you feel a difference between masculine and feminine energy when you're under the influence of it?
For me, I do. For almost everyone I spoke with, they do see her too. And I've met her a couple of times. You do see men though too. I've had lots of people who see men. I've seen men. I've had lots of masculine journeys too. But she does hold this entity where you will meet her and you'll see her. Just recently in Brazil when I went when I was living out there in March, I had an experience where I just felt so anxious about my life and where I was going and all these things. And I just kept asking, what am I doing? Like all these questions. And she just came, this like green goddess came, and she brought up this beautiful light in her hand. And she said, this represents hope and faith. If you can't hold this, I will hold this for you. And she put it into my heart. And I was like, immediately sunk into my chair. And I felt so taken care of, like, wow, she's got this for me. When I lose my faith and hope in myself, I can channel her in. Not even with ayahuasca. I talked to her outside, like, this morning, because she holds that space for me. But there are weird things that just channel in that show it's her. Like the first time we hosted in my house for my mom and dad, when my dad and I were holding each other crying at the end of ceremony, this candle that we had on the table bursted into flames and lit the whole table on fire.
Ugh, love that.
And we had to quickly like get this fire out. But we had to get this whole fire out. But me and my mom looked at each other and we were like, wow, it's crazy. And when you're even brewing the tea, you can feel, when you open the windows, you can feel this energy come in, and it's her. She's kind of welcoming, like, I'm in the space. It's very, very interesting and very cool.
So you obviously have gone through several journeys in so far in your lifespan, right? Is there a peak point? Is this something that is continuous? You said, like, where am I at in my life now? I'm looking for some answers. You got it at that moment. You're obviously going to be in a different place in life in 3 years from now. You're probably going to be seeking different answers. So I'm hearing that this is a continuous process. This isn't something you do once and you're healed and everything is great.
Yeah.
Right? I'm also under the impression that there's no equation to this for every person, right?
Yeah.
So what is one to expect with, like, okay, if you're going to welcome this type of a journey into your life, like, be open to this rather than that, or, like, can you walk through somebody through that that's like, okay, I'm ready to hop onto this journey. What does that look like long term?
It's completely dependent. So for me personally, I'd say if I can do a big dose, big ceremony at least once a year, I'm good with that. Because there's a thing called the afterglow with ayahuasca, and everyone's body is different. So afterglow with ayahuasca can last. It's like this feeling where you're waking up early, you're eating healthy, you just feel so energized, you feel so grateful to be on life and to be here on earth. That can last like 3 months, 6 months, a year, a lifetime. And so, for example, with my mom, she had this grand experience, and she feels like she never has to do it again. She truly feels she's like, I got what I needed. I don't need to do it again.
For now.
You never know. For me though, I just know I have like so much stuff, and this is like my life. Like ayahuasca is my purpose now at this point. So I feel like once a year check-in is good for me, but everyone's so different. I've had some where I've hosted them once a year, some where they come in and they're like, I know that I'm going to need more than one.
Oh my God. Sorry. I just got another question. Sorry. I like interrupt. I'm so sorry. I
You're
get
good.
so excited to
No,
hear
I
what you
love
have
it.
to say about this. I get frustrated with people that do so much plant medicine that they end up spiritually bypassing this 3-dimensional world. Can we talk about spiritual bypassing?
Yes. And there's a lot of people like that where then they also take it as a way they have this like spiritual ego,
Yes.
which is the most nastiest
Define
thing
it.
too.
What does it mean for someone who doesn't understand
spiritual
what this
ego?
means? Well, bypassing ego, I have no idea what you guys are
Spiritual
talking about.
ego, in my opinion, spiritual bypassing, I don't know if you're defining it differently, is like literally just drinking the tea and not even giving yourself time to integrate what you learned. You're just like on to the next, grabbing the next thing. So another side note with that is there are some churches and things here where they have 2 days ayahuasca, 2 days wachuma, which those plants do work great together. I'm not bashing on it. They work great together. But in my opinion, how do you know which one is the one that's helping you heal? How do you know if it's wachuma or ayahuasca? Like, how do you know, right?
Does it matter?
It does matter because you kind of need to know which one is your light at the end of the day, right?
Okay.
So for me, I know ayahuasca is my light. Not bashing on any other plant medicines. I love them. They're great. But I know for me, when people ask you what type of plant do you feel like you are, I'm like some people are like, oh, I'm a mushroom. I'm like, I'm definitely an ayahuasca vine. Like, I know that. So you need to have that awareness first. And then the spiritual ego, oh gosh, I've come across so many people like this. It's where they just feel like they've had such profound experiences that they're able to now dictate and your life, your experiences, that they are now able to feel like they can facilitate an old space as well because they've had these experiences. It can come off very snarky. It can come off extremely disconnected. Do you want to, have you had an experience with someone with spiritual ego where they're talking down to you a little bit?
Oh, you sweet little one. I think you just need to meet Mother Aya. Yeah. Or just they bypass the human experience.
Yes.
You know, like the light in me sees the light in you. That's why you're angry.
Yes.
You haven't thoroughly processed your trauma and you haven't met divine ayahuasca. That's why you're sad, you poor little one. It's almost like they measure you up where you're smaller than them.
Yeah.
Or I just feel like they come back to this earth and again, I've had conversations with these people. The light in me sees the light in you. I'm like, can you just tell me what the fuck that means for a second? Like, what does that mean?
And this is what I love, like even your energy. I think this is why I've become so successful as a therapist too, is because people are like, how I'm talking to you is how I talk to my clients.
Yeah.
I'm not here to bullshit. I lead with being human first. And I know that. I'm not going to be a spiritual, la, 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 like wear all white and just like flowers in my hair. That's fucking great. I hope I can get there one day and live in the mountains and grow my own vegetables.
See, but if I'm listening to this and I was talking with all these mama waskas and ayayas and all this shit, I'm like, who are these hippies and what are they talking about? So it's kind of already there.
It is.
But that's what I want to, I'll be honest with you. I mean, if I'm listening to it, I'm like, who's Mama Waska?
But I'm not going to come here and like force you to go into this place of like changing your whole identity. Like you got to grow your hair out now. You got to get a beard. You got to wear like all this.
So whoever's listening, you don't need to be a hippie to do this.
You don't need to do that. You can still work in Wall Street and do this. You know, it might change you to want to quit your job. Maybe
that's a good business idea, by the way. Bridging the gap between what the perception of doing plant-based medicine, the culture, the hippie living in the wild and, you know, whatever.
Totally.
To corporate suits, kill, and bridging that gap where you don't have to be one or the other. You could be in the middle.
You can.
That's a great business idea.
Well, I think that's what you're doing. I mean,
it is what I lead with.
Yeah.
Like even like if you look at my personal Instagram, like one day I'm dressed all sexy going out and the next day I'm like, you know, wearing like a tribal outfit. Like it's just, we have to be dynamic. That's who I am. And that's who we are. I'm not going to change my whole identity just because I've had these profound experiences. Also, what your ancestors tell you during these ceremonies, my ancestors never been like, you need to change yourself and do this. It's like the change is internal. But I'm never going to talk down to someone and be like, oh yeah, it's because you're eating meat. It's because you're not drinking ayahuasca. It's because this. It's not it. Yes, I talk about ayahuasca a lot and I'm sure people are like, shut up. But I'm never being like, oh, you need to do it. You need to do it. I'm not going to like force someone to do something like that because I feel like they're lower than me.
So the question, so I mean, you come off as very humble and very modest, and obviously you're talking the big talk because you're a professional and you do this as a profession. So that's why it's coming off. But you can also hear the humbleness and the sincerity. People who are not humble with this, were they not humble to begin with?
Yeah. 100%.
And they had the ego already anyways, and now they just were fueled by this experience to now become egotistical
100%.
and overbearing just with the plant now?
Yeah.
Okay.
I've met some ayahuasca leaders where they feel like they've healed themselves so much that they want to help heal people, but it's not genuinely healing people. It's more so everyone praise me because I'm healed and join my community because I'm healed. And it's like this dictatorship almost is what it feels like. And I've come across a lot of people who, people that I personally know, people that I was related to at some points too. I say at some point because we've drifted, where they talk so profoundly. I've reached this place of healing through ayahuasca and plant medicine and things like that. But it's led with just so much ego, and they already had that before.
Yeah.
So this is the tricky part with ayahuasca is the integration part, right? If you have astral projected and healed your lineage in a ceremony, you can either take that as a way of, thank you so much. I am definitely going to make sure this stops with the next generation, and I'm going to heal that. Or you take it as a way of, you chose me?
Yes.
You chose me?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh. I am going to do all of it's all about
They didn't
me.
really hear the message then.
Not at all.
Yeah.
Which is interesting.
And, yeah.
Sorry.
No, go ahead. Which is
really
I was
broken
gonna say,
back.
which ties into the integration part. Who's holding you accountable?
Right.
You're drinking ayahuasca and then you just go off into the regular life. Like, where's your therapist, your integration coach? Where are these
I
people?
love that you're saying that. That's super important because like we work in the addiction space and there's a lot of like, no, that we're not touching that, right? And it's because there's the whole world of like our clients, if they had access to this, they would just go get high and they would use this as another substance, which is, there's a lot of validity to that. I do agree with that. But I think that this can be helpful if the person who's taking it follows what you just said. There's a purpose, there's intention, there's follow through, there's continued care, there's working with a therapist. You're going into it with the intention of healing and working on yourself long term, not just going to get high and party with the guys on the roof.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think too. It's
Don't do it on the roof, please.
Don't ever do that.
Scratch that.
I don't look at it as getting high either. You're face to face with the deepest parts of yourself that you have to face in order to transcend. It's not fun.
No, who wants to sit there and purge and like cry for hours? You know?
I mean, there's some weird people that want to see ghosts and shit.
Yeah.
So I mean, like,
Yeah, you're
they
right,
might
you're
like
right.
that kind of stuff. They're like, oh crap, the devil.
I think the problem is that there is still, even though with plant medicine being so trendy, there's a disconnect. Even with psilocybin and all these things, like I work with a lot of clients who smoke cannabis. Like we live in California, it's normal.
Yeah.
But they'll complain and be like, I'm just tired of being this pothead. I'm high all the time, And I have some clients that work in cannabis, the business side. So they're working with it. And when I tell them, why don't you treat it ceremonially? You know, when instead of doing bong rips, which is the same equivalent to taking shots, you're just trying to get roll up a nice joint, have your music, set and setting, set an intention, hold the joint to your heart, put it to your third eye, and then say, oh, I'm really trying to get healing. What's the intention of using this? Because then you might be like, actually, I don't really want to even smoke it.
After that whole thing,
Yeah.
for sure.
Or you might be like, yeah, you know what? This is my intention. I'm going to do it. So
Can you imagine going to a bar, someone takes a shot, and they just start performing this whole ceremony? And they're like, the fuck this? I don't want to drink it.
maybe that would change the relationship with alcohol. Honestly, maybe it would, because we're in a pandemic with alcohol itself too, especially with COVID. It just made things worse. But if we all treated things as ceremonially with ceremonial purpose, we might have a more deeper connection, intention, where you might actually not want to be doing any of that stuff anyways.
Right.
Appreciation for it.
Appreciation.
Do you have any ayahuasca with you right now?
Yeah, let me get in my bag. I'm just joking.
Dawn, hang out for a second.
Everyone cool with this?
Yeah, might as well. This has been fascinating. I have a lot of other questions. I think, unfortunately our time is limited, but what is something that you would want the listeners listening now that have never experienced this before and to take away from this podcast?
I think the biggest thing is if you're feeling called to it, follow that calling. Don't shy away from it because it's coming up for a reason. Even this podcast, if you're listening to it and you're like, oh my gosh, I've been looking for these answers and this information, follow through with that. And really being intentional with everything, even outside of ayahuasca, just really just learning to be intentional with everything and preparing yourself for that moment. And if you're not feeling called to it, but just admire the work, you can still pursue and volunteer and help in all these ways with people that are on this journey too. You don't need to necessarily drink the tea to be in that community either. You know, it's such an accepting community. And so I think the biggest takeaway is if you're feeling called to it, do your research, do intensive research, ask people their experiences who are not just doing it because they want to say, I did ayahuasca. You know, to really reach out to people. There's a great documentary. Joe Rogan is the host of it. And it's also a book. It's called the DMT, the Spirit Molecule.
So good.
You can find it free on YouTube. But if you don't like reading, watch the YouTube one. If you like reading, it's a great, great read. And it will break down everything for you. But I think the biggest takeaway is if you're feeling called to it, don't shy away from that.
What's the best way for people to contact you and get a hold of you?
There's an intake form that they can fill out on the ayahuasca Instagram page. I post a lot of memes. I make it very funny. Again, human experience.
What's the page?
It's at AYA_Light of Liberty. Aya Light of Liberty. And they can also come to me personally. My Instagram is at Paving the Way with 2 Y's at the end. They can reach me at my website, www.pavanbasra.com. I am currently building up the church website right now as we speak, so that will also be there. But you can find the intake form at the link in bio on the Instagram to pass through the medical stuff.
Oh, so cool what you're doing. I respect it so much. I really, really do.
Yeah. And I hope that all the listeners out there get some useful information, contact, I want to highlight what you said, research.
Yes.
Don't just dive into the next thing that you hear or listen to. I think that's super important. And we appreciate our followers. We appreciate our listeners. Please subscribe, like, share, promote. And we look forward to having you all in the next show. Pavan, thank you so much for being with us today. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
This was fun.